Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for being here and for choosing to be part of the conversation today. Keys to leading deliberately developmental organizations. And for anyone who is new to that term, we're going to give a bit of a background before diving into the discussion so everyone feels up to speed. My name is Asia Smith, and I'm an executive leadership coach and community catalyst at ThinkHuman. I'm tuning in from the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, but I know we've got an international crowd with us today, so let's connect. Let us know in the chat what your name is and where you're dialing in from today. Just want to hear from a few people and see who we've got in the room. Okay, I see Katie from Charlotte, North Carolina. Welcome, Katie. Lily from San Diego, Cameron from Phoenix. Welcome, welcome. Darren from Chicago, Lori from Long Island. We've got Portland, Colorado, Texas. Okay, cool, cool. Well, a warm welcome to those who just got a shout out and to everyone sharing the space with us today. Feel free to continue to introduce yourself. We're all really grateful to have you here. Please take from this conversation whatever you need to serve you in your growth, and please don't let the growth stop there. We encourage connecting with a teammate, a friend, or a loved one, perhaps even a coach or a therapist to talk through any of this so you can take care of yourself and feel empowered to continue the discussion in your community. So per usual, we're going to get warmed up in the chat again for today's conversation, since we're talking about orgs navigating the current state of the world, being deliberately developmental. What does an organization being deliberately developmental mean to you? And if you don't know what that is, that's okay, but we just want to get some ideas in the chat. What does being a DDO mean to you? We've got some more folks who are introducing themselves. Oh, I don't know yet. Yep, that's a great answer. And that's what we are expecting from some folks for the webinar. So that's great. I see holistic support. Absolutely. Bringing your authentic self and working on growing edges. Yeah. Helping individuals in the organization grow personally and interpersonally. Yeah. Love that. Love that. That's great input. And it's really great to see folks interacting in the chat throughout the webinar. If you feel energized to say something, please don't hesitate to share, comment, and ask questions. This is really great input so far, as I mentioned. So just know that your presence and contribution always make the conversation richer. You might spark a thought for someone in the room, or we all might learn something from what you have to say. And just on the topic of DDO and what it means, just to make sure that we're all aligned, in case it's helpful context for anyone out there, we've got a couple of slides that have the DDO definition. And so, and I'll actually keep this up for a second. We've got a couple more slides in case anyone wants to take screenshots, but just a summary of what a DDO is. It's organized around the simple but radical conviction that organizations best prosper when they're more deeply aligned with their people's strongest motive, which is to grow. In a growth culture or a deliberately developmental organization, people aren't just improving process and skills, but they're building their capacity to see through blind spots and grow holistically. So DDOs create systems and are also founded and rooted in workplace cultures that are conducive so individuals and teams can operate at their best. And so it's all about business goals and personal goals aligning here. This is a physical or visual representation of a DDO in case it's helpful. A point that I'll put out there is that DDO, it isn't necessarily a new concept. A lot of orgs out there are already DDOs and they might not even know it. A startup culture, if you will, has actually been built in large part because of the principles of a DDO. But this is a new perspective, and we could say a more deliberate approach to people development. And it's especially great as a roadmap for orgs who might be new to this, as far as how to make it measurable, sustainable, and successful at your organization, which we all know this is essential for recruitment, retention, productivity, brand recognition, the list goes on. So all that being said, speaking of DDOs, this webinar wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for our fantastic partners who happen to be DDOs, and the commitment and heartfelt work of our team and leadership at ThinkHuman, another DDO, to provide a safe and brave space for real conversations in the worlds like this one. So I'm thrilled to introduce ThinkHuman and our partners for today's webinar. Then we're going to have a bit of an artistic segment, and we'll get into the conversation for today. So to start, ThinkHuman is a leadership development organization, and we support HR and learning and development leaders with implementing community-centered and experiential-based leadership programs that are built to support a culture of belonging. The leadership programs that we offer, in particular our flagship programs, Leader Lab and Mini Lab, are designed to create mindset shifts and behavioral change over time that sticks. So toward the end of the webinar, a poll is going to pop up. You can let us know if you're interested in hearing from ThinkHuman or from our partners. But in the meantime, I'm just going to put my link in the chat. I do see a comment about going back to the first slide. What I will mention, for the sake of time, we'll send these slides out after the webinar, so stay tuned. We'll make sure to send you this information. And so to get into our next partner, Culture Amp. Culture Amp is a people and culture platform that makes it easy to collect, understand, and take action on feedback throughout the entire employee lifecycle. Culture Amp revolutionizes how over 25 million employees across 4,000 companies create a better world of work. And as the global platform leader for employee experience, Culture Amp empowers companies of all sizes and industries to transform employee engagement, develop high-performing teams, and retain talent via cutting-edge research, powerful technology, and the world's largest employee data set in the world. And last but certainly not least, we have Future. Future brings human connection to digital personal training, empowering organizations through fitness and helping people get into the best shape of their lives with their own fitness and wellness coach. Future lightens the load by offloading the research and planning required to design safe, effective, and realistic workout routines. Employees are in constant contact with their Future coach and provided with a customized training plan at a fraction of the cost. Future is on a mission to bring out the best in people and believes that honest, authentic relationships help us feel safe, seen, and heard while maintaining our lifelong health. So thanks again to our partners and to our amazing panel, who you will all meet shortly, for helping us bring this event to life. Before we dive into the webinar, we'd also like to share an artistic moment as we clear our minds and settle in for this conversation. We hope that this helps you to feel grounded and open for today's discussion. So blessing us with his gifts today, we have Raymond Robinson. Raymond is a multifaceted musician from Prince George's County, Maryland. He wears many hats, including professional saxophonist and pianist, elementary school music teacher, and he's also a budding entrepreneur. Raymond loves bringing the energy, being an entertainer, and building community through music. He performs at various public and private events throughout the DC metropolitan area and beyond. So if you'd like to connect with Raymond after his performance, he'll be putting his info in the chat, and we'll also share that after the webinar along with the slides that have been requested. So without further ado, I'm going to stop share and turn my music down so Raymond can turn his music up. Raymond, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you very much, Asia. Thanks for having me today. Again, I'm Ray Robinson. I'm from the DC metropolitan area, and let's just get right into it. Hope you guys like it. Again, I'm Raymond Robinson. I'm gonna write my info in the chat and leave a comment. I'll stick around to read any of them. And just thank you for having me again.
Thank you so much, Raymond, for sharing your talents with the world. You're getting a lot of love in the chat, and welcome to everyone for this webinar. I am Hakimia Jackson, Global Executive Coach, DEI Board Advisor, CEO of Divinely Powered, and today I will be your ThinkHuman moderator, and we're so excited to have you all here with us. So I have a question for you. How often do you run into having to make a choice between the profit motive and the human development motive, and having to prioritize one over the other within the organization? Many workplaces claim to create the conditions for individuals to overcome their own internal barriers to change, or to provide the resources, tools, and support to take stock of and transcend their own blind spots. But few are deliberately organized to put employee growth at the very center of their mission. In a DDO, people development with organization development are skillfully intertwined. People and organizations help each other flourish. So you may be thinking, how do we be intentional in building a deliberately development organization? You ask all the right questions and you are in the right place. These brilliant leaders today will provide their unique perspectives on how to integrate a deliberately developmental approach. Please welcome Tyler Cahill, Senior People Scientist, Culture App, Lauren Gilbo, Head of Growth at ThinkHuman, Ricky Turner, Head of People at Future, Fatma Gedera, Head of Community at ThinkHuman. Welcome, welcome so much. We are excited to have you here with us today. And so starting with Tyler and then the rest of the experts on the panel, DDO, from your own experience and perspective, looks like what? Please share with our community.
It looks like a company that embraces individual development, whether that is your top performer or someone who's brand new and kind of struggling to develop in their role, while also embracing the opportunity that sometimes individuals may make mistakes and may not have all the answers or provide the best solution, and embracing that and providing that into a learning opportunity of how an individual can continue to grow in their role and learn from that mistake, and again, continue to progress in the path they want to move forward into.
Thank you so much, Tyler, for sharing. Accessing that growth mindset within the organization. That's what I hear.
I think it's the kind of organization where people have certainly enough safety to be vulnerable to grow. It's a place where leaders are competent about the language around growth and how to spark growth. It's a kind of organization that embraces innovation, right, and celebrates the development of a person. It is a community in the truest sense of the word, with all of the trappings and characteristics of a true community. So when I think about a deliberately developmental organization, those are the things that come to mind for me.
Thank you for
Really to
sharing.
kind of like play off of community and in like a DDO, I think when I think about it, it's like it is a community that is also like providing the resources, space, and time for growth, like providing those like moments like that can happen throughout, like whether in like formalized training or just in like, you know, an event or something that like happens in the workplace, and like getting in that mindset of like, we're here to grow, we're here to learn, we're here to change, we are like, you know, always evolving, and like getting all in that mindset and supporting each other in that way. And that's like that community support is so important, because growing's hard. Growing's not easy. It's a little painful, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Absolutely.
I love everything everybody shared. And I think like the thing that came up to me when I heard all the practices that you all shared is the responsibility of an organization that they have towards their people to create the safety that you talked about, Ricky, and the community to be able to grow. So it's, before we get into even the practices, I feel like it's really important to call out even the principle of understanding the level of responsibility that takes and the power an organization has. and how that matches the level of power matches the level of responsibility, and how that is important to understand that to be able to create those spaces.
Yeah, so well said, Fatma. I like how you put it all together. When you were speaking, I thought about it takes a partnership. Historically, we may have seen it separate, right? But now it's like we're coming together, the true partnership.
Mhm.
And so with that, when you think about leadership, in what ways have you been supported by an organization in your development journey?
Well, I'll start, right? I think I talked to the group in one of our pre-calls, and I chronicle a couple of the kind of the cooler leaders that I've had. And these leaders clearly had a growth mindset when it came to me as a professional. And they communicated as such, right? They gave me permission to make mistakes. They acknowledged what I was good at. And we talked openly and honestly about what I needed to get better at. And they demystified kind of what happens when you make a mistake. They normalized it, right? Speaking very deliberately around, we want you to make mistakes because that's how we know that you're growing, right? We built infrastructures around that. Hey, we're going to praise you in public, and if we have to correct you, we'll do that offline, because that's our intimate time to manage your growth. Everybody, the relationship between my leaders and I was an intimate one, and so we manage my growth intimately, not publicly. All of those things signal to me that I was safe there and I could be my best version of myself there. So when I think about my experiences, those are the things that I've experienced.
I would echo everything Ricky just said. I think those are some of the best leaders. On top of that, I think leaders who also show they're still developing and they're still growing. When I talk with leaders and they emphasize what their strong suits are, but also, hey, this is a weak spot. I don't know this. And here's what I'm doing to get better at that. That reinforces that, hey, everyone has a growth mindset. Everyone has opportunities to continue to grow, while also reinforcing the behaviors you want out of your employees. A lot of times, companies will put together these amazing programs and expect their individual contributors to take part, but then leadership doesn't participate at the same volume. And trying to make sure that up and down the level, whether you're a senior executive or that fresh junior analyst right out of college, emphasizing and rewarding and reinforcing the behaviors that lead to continued development can definitely kind of help embed that DDO culture within your entire company.
Tyler, I love that. And I think that the best organizations I've been to are ones where leaders at the highest levels are vulnerable. It takes so much vulnerability, especially as a leader, and the pressure it takes to lead, to be I'm not great at this. These are my downfalls. These are the things that I need to work on. And that does give the rest of the organization permission to say the same thing and be vulnerable in that way. Because if you're going to be a DDO and you're going to focus on growth, you got to get really comfortable, being vulnerable and doing that introspection and feeling comfortable, saying that very publicly and out loud, which is not natural in, our general society, or hasn't been, unfortunately.
I feel like for me, it's also about not denying anymore that a person comes with an internal world to the workplace.
Come on, Bob.
And that there's no separation between the two, actually. And that all the identities we hold come also to work. So we come all of us to work, as a whole. But we choose not to show some parts of ourselves. But we come with a history, with the traumas, with all of it. And it's important to understand in the version of the DDO structure that leaders acknowledge that both go together. Yeah. That for us to resolve our intrapersonal and interpersonal issues actually would have us advance the business, if anything. And it's not a time wasted. It's actually time that is gained towards the growth and acceleration and learning, if anything.
Well said, Palmer. So you got me stirring up, and I just have to now put it out there because I know we had some rich conversation prior to. So and I asked you all this question, when did we get to this point, community, as well as the experts, where learning and development growth mindset was only accessible during the learning and development summits or during training? When did we get to this place where certain types of learning was punitive versus others? And I would love to get your thoughts on that, community as well as the panel.
So I'll jump in. The question of when did we get to the place where we have to have these points in time where development is allowed versus development always continues. I think it's a multi-layered question that speaks to, that recognizes a lot of things that happen but often go unsaid, right? So we talked about this earlier. If we recognize that what was considered excellent performance or excellent behaviors, just the very notion of that was biased because it was based on kind of white male normative behaviors, right? And then if we recognize that early workplaces were organized almost like a military institution, right? The way in which we organize them, then it's easy to see where we have these summits where it's okay for everybody to learn a skill and then to go back into behaving. And when you model that way, you make it really, really difficult for different communities of learners to learn. So I'm thinking in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, coming out of the automotive age, right? Coming out of the coming out of the GE, the IBM phases, right? Where you had these regimented training programs. And I hate that term because you train animals, you teach people, right? But we had these regimented training programs that everyone mustered up this energy and they went to in 3 days and death by PowerPoint and leave.
Oh no, we lost him. He's been having internet issues, y'all. He was in a zone. Yes, he was, but I would love to get the thoughts of you all as well.
I think one point that comes to my mind is historically who's had access to those summits, to those leadership, to those workshops. A lot of times like high potential or the top performers, they get the priorities. And for Culture Amp, since we have access to 6,000 customers across the globe and millions of points of data, we do a lot of research around this of what is performance and how does that relate to the overall employee experience. And what we found is that high performers, they had managers who are more generally interested and invested in their career development than those good performers, those average performers, and those poor performers. And why is that? In psychology, we've seen that when individuals are identified as like gifted, talented, they're going to be your top performers, we naturally sometimes gravitate towards them and provide them resources and support to reach that optimal level while forgetting the 75, 85, 90% of the rest of that population. So I think it's really ingraining that while high potential programs, I'm not saying, oh my God, scrap them, throw them away. They're great, but how also can we support the rest of that population and ensure they're growing and they're achieving and they're developing in their own way, in their own path. And like we've shared in a pre-call, it's not necessarily just training and development. There's a plethora of other ways individuals learn and grow outside of a classroom setting.
Yep.
Yep, and that equal access like is so important because I don't know, it's very disenfranchising to just see, you know, people that are like put into this like special bucket get all of this extra stuff. And well, you know, I might be special too if I was given the opportunity to grow in that way.
Well, I do think that like to each their place. Like, for example, for me, training or like workshops, cement the actual behavior that we are trying to have show up in the organization. And then it's on the managers to be learning on the job and giving space to their people to learn in difficult conversations. So it's like, if we don't have the training, then people are like left to themselves to like come up with behavior that is acceptable within the organization. And that's usually not what a culture, an intentional culture is. So it's important to have like anchors of behaviors that are steeped from values that get us all grounded as leaders. So we know what is allowed, what is not allowed in the organization. And then in that, we create people that are able to have the conversations, the growth conversations, the hard feedback, the difficult performance reviews, because that's the spaces where people actually learn on the job, the people who don't have access to those high leadership small circles.
Yeah. And to keep people accountable to those values and practices that you define for your DDO. Yeah. And so I want to get to a community question we have here. Jeanette says, it's so hard to make leaders model the behaviors. What has worked to encourage this practice across levels?
Mm-hmm. It is practice. It's like, I've been reading about DDO a lot. I've been so interested in this since like we had this topic come up. I'm an organizational psychologist, but had no idea about DDO until I read about it, honestly. Mm-hmm. And I was fascinated by the examples they were giving about, and everything revolved around building practices, not like sending people to places and trying to like mask things. It's like, how can we create spaces where we build the same continuous practice that would have people embody the value of the organization and have that really flow in the culture as well?
One thing that I've seen is treating a kind of transformation or journey on DDO like a change management exercise. When you deploy new software, new technology, how do you reinforce individuals using that, following that process, using that tool? Again, one, it really starts with how much buy-in do we have across the org, especially those top levels, that this is valuable, this is important, and we care about this. It's also reinforcing those behaviors that lead to DDO. So that reinforcement can be just more informal of like, hey, Lauren, love that you are utilizing one of those skills we practiced in XYZ workshop, or that we had a conversation on. Really keep up the great work. It could be more formal settings during performance cycles. How are we measuring how someone's growing, developing? Yes, we want to make sure they're executing on their MBOs or OKRs, but how are you implementing goal setting and the achievement of goal setting in that performance process that a lot of managers, a lot of people care about, because it results in more direct impact to themselves, like pay and promotion. So those are kind of two initial ways of kind of getting that top executive buy-in and making sure there's a coalition with behind you, and then reinforcing those positive behaviors you're seeing in informal settings as well as formal processes.
Yeah.
Tyler, I think so many companies don't, like, they say like we want to like grow. Growth is like so important to us, but then it's not rewarded. You know, when it's not built into that pay and performance cycle, and humans work on a reward basis. That's what we do. That is like our nature. Like, we love getting the gold star and the treat, you know, and we're going to do the things that take us in that direction, that like get us there. So if we're not like rewarding growth and having it be like a core principle that like people get promoted if they are, see growth in them, then like it's not, they'll focus on other things.
Right.
What's in it for me? That's always what I kind of talk about, is what's in it for me, whether I'm an individual contributor, a manager, a director. Why should I care about this initiative, this change, whether it is DDO, or you can think of any change you've tried to implement it across your company? Connecting it to that employee can work wonders of getting that buy-in and getting those behaviors ingrained.
Yep.
I'm gonna Laramie that comment. We'll grow for
Grow
trees.
for trees. Yeah.
There you go.
Yep. I hear it, and you're right, Lauren. You know, when we think about it, we get rewards for the key accomplishments or the main metrics that we meet. And what I hear you saying is, I want you to also get rewarded in those areas where you may not have typically explored. That may have been a barrier or a limitation, and now you've overcome that.
Yes. It takes so much effort to grow, right?
Come on.
It's like
That's an
that should
interesting
be
idea,
rewarded.
Lauren.
Like,
I love
the internal work you have to do, the practice, the like unpacking, the trying new things, the stretch zone. Exactly, Asia. We talk a lot about that here at ThinkHuman, and like being in that stretch zone and like feeling that like tension start to release. Like, it's hard. And like, we have to reward that. We have to be like, yes, that's the hard stuff. That's the juice. Like the easy day-to-day, like ding, 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 ding. That's, anyone can do that. But the actual like expansion, that's juicy.
Right, it is. And to your point, I heard each of you say something to the effect of, you know, being in that space where you have the support, but you also have the permission. Because what I think Ricky was alluding to is certain people may not have the permission. They may not feel safe enough to share. They may be in a underrepresented group, marginalized community, and you're telling me to implement DDO, but I'm afraid to bring my full self. I'm afraid because historically, you know, me showing my weakness have been punitive. And so what do I do in these moments? You're telling me to stretch myself?
I think, like I hit on psychological safety. How are we allowing people to feel safe with that? I mean, you bring up a great point of quiet quitting is another trend. We see that Black women and other minorities don't have the privilege of quiet quitting because they are viewed as, oh, they sometimes are already fighting in bias in their reviews, in how they're viewed. So them slacking off or just doing the bare minimum is a lot different than someone who's a white male doing the bare minimum. So I think, again, you bring up a great point of how can we encourage and enable an environment where individuals feel comfortable raising their voice, comfortable having a dissenting view, comfortable trying something new and being innovative, and having that safety net. I'll put an asterisk there, though. There is a difference between allowing and cultivating psychologically safe environments while also still holding people accountable. Sometimes it's hard to balance up.
Talk about it, Tyler.
Yeah, it's, you could have someone who's like, I want to be creative. I'm always trying something new. Well, if you're constantly making the same mistake over and over, it's no longer, oh, it's because I'm having a DDO mindset. It's no, you're no longer hitting those performance objectives. Again, it's a delicate balance. I wish I could give you that perfect magic wand of do this and then it works, but it's really having those parameters and those definitions of what do we mean by being innovative, creative, willing to take risks, while also making sure that we are addressing any performance issues or, importantly, learning from mistakes we make in the past.
And I think it's important to note that DDO is not for every organization, and maybe most organizations cannot start there because there needs to be a lot of capacity building inside of organizations before they can allow something this vulnerable to happen, which is the process of growing. So for that, we need to work on the blind spots and the biases that we already hold inside of our organizations, and like at least note them and actively be working at them when it comes to like inclusion, belonging, anything that has to do with how we're treating beings inside of organizations, and take that possibility of advancing into capability building to be able to support people to grow and create that psychological safety, but not trying to doing the reverse of like, okay, right now we're just going to be a growth oriented organization. We can talk about everything and anything. If people are not actually trained and able to have that level of honesty and truth and integrity and accountability, then we can't have those conversations. We can't be in a growth mode.
It's intentionally putting together the like scaffolding and the foundation.
Exactly.
This. You cannot just jump into this stuff.
Come on.
Like it takes a lot of intentionality to like really do this right. To create that safety, which is not like there's not one thing to do. It is like a whole cultural shift and like an embrace of this. And it takes time.
Hi, Ricky.
You're back.
Hello, everybody. I apologize. I'll apologize now. I live in Portland. Today is a windy day, and where I live, it causes rolling blackouts. So I'm going to do my very best to make sure it doesn't happen again. But I've exited and sitting on my deck, and we'll go with it for as long as we can. Hopefully, I won't be a distraction.
Oh,
Thank you for sharing, Ricky. We appreciate it. We appreciate you sacrificing sitting in that cold weather for us, okay?
I know.
It's a lovely day in Portland, but it is windy.
Oh, appreciate that dedication and that deliberate
Dedication,
attempt
wow.
to be involved in this conversation, because the community was definitely feeling you and your response to the question I asked earlier. But now, we're just talking about how can we get, the leaders on board and shifting behavior and culture. And so a lot of people here, as well as in the chat, we were talking about psychological safety and commitment. Malia had a question: how do we create psychological safety?
I like that question. I think it can be really difficult to create because psychological safety requires trust, and it requires a great amount of humanity. The other side, like someone needs to see you and to see you fully. It also requires that the people that are creating the environment have empathy and care, right? It also requires that they signal that it's a safe space. So there's some behavioral things you can do. Not reflexively punishing people when growth opportunities happen, right? So if I know you're working on a project and you're learning, I'm not gonna ding your bonus. I'm not gonna ding your merit, right? That's a punishment. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cultivate you through that process. I think behaviors like that demonstrate over time that there's psychological safety. The thing that organizations, especially mainline tenured organizations, have to deal with is that they have a history of not creating psychological safety that is passed down and it is amplified by the infrastructure. So it becomes very difficult for them after 50 years to say, you can be psychologically safe here, when the evidence indicates that those before you have been punished for doing some of those things.
Right.
Newer organizations may not have that problem though.
Right. There are some institutional systems and processes that, unfortunately impact the ability to create psychological safety.
I think it's kind of asking yourself, when people voice a contrary opinion, what's the reaction of their team, their leaders, their managers? When a new idea is proposed, is it instantly, no, that won't work? Or it's, hey, that's a great idea. We can enhance it further by XYZ. Then how do we go about implementing those innovative or different solutions? Is it a very long process that's very bureaucratic, a lot of red tape? Or do we have leaders who are willing to explore? I think Ricky hit on a great point that when you're in an institution that has had a culture ingrained where it maybe wouldn't embrace psychological safety, new ideas, new opinions, new voices, it can take a lot longer to kind of deconstruct that than a company that is a lot newer, maybe only a few years, 10 years old, and kind of really can experiment to separate themselves out from the other competitors in the space that would maybe cultivate that. But psychological safety is something that it's a complex, nuanced construct that takes time to really kind of identify, the same like employee engagement. You can't just say, oh, I want to make someone more engaged. There's a lot that drives into it that kind of takes time to measure, understand those results, and then take action over time.
Yep. And I think too, like, there's like the examples, and then there's also like training, like getting people into a room and like exploring what this means and exploring like our differences and like understanding that like that's okay, and getting people into that like yes and mindset, like you said, like not like cutting people off at the knees. I don't know if anybody's ever done any improv, but like I love improv, and like that's yes and is like one of the biggest rules of improv. I think it like plays deeply into psychological safety, because as soon as you like cut no, like it's over, the scene's over. There's nothing you can't, like it's the reality's gone. But if it's yes and let's think about this, or like what about this, then you're in communication, you're in like a collective experience with somebody. And that's so important.
Yeah, it is. And it's one of the key components of a DDO. It helps you build this culture that where we're lifting as we climb.
Yep.
So despite whatever level you're at, you know, you may be lifting something while you're lifting them while you're climbing forward, you know, depending on what level you are in your organization. And Molly says, appreciate this conversation. Yes, and love it.
Yes.
Ricky, I see you shaking your head over there.
I was, I like the improv aspect of it. A lot of organizations leverage companies to come in and do that. If you haven't done it, it's a really great half day or day of experiences. You'll laugh, but you'll also learn a lot, right? And in improv, what you learn to do is you value every so-called mistake, right? Every time you break something, you have to keep moving. So you learn from the broken pieces and you make it additive, right? And that is the foundation for the types of cultures that we're trying to create.
Yes, you're talking like, one of the most beautiful things, and it so applies to a DDO, is there's this concept of taking a failure bow in improv. Like if you fail, you go, I failed. And like, just like saying I failed is so hard to do in like the corporate world, right? We're so scared of failure because it like reflects on us. But if we can just accept it, like we all fail. And like, if we're not failing, we're really not trying. We're not playing jazz with each other. We're not like experiencing life and like getting so comfortable with just, I failed. Oh, well.
Yeah. In our earlier sessions, I remember you just sparked my memory on just seeing failure. I mean, we say it, but we really don't, I feel like we don't believe it. Seeing failure as an opportunity to build competency, seeing mistakes as an opportunity to really fill a gap and to grow to that next level forward. What does that look like? How can I accept this belief and normalize it?
Yep.
Normalizing failure, you mean? I think by seeing other people doing it first, like that's how adults learn mostly, is by seeing what is happening in their environment. And the more leaders are modeling that, the more people give themselves the authority and the permission to do the same. And it takes also a lot of times, not just one time. Like it takes a practice that somebody is seeing as like many data points of, okay, this behavior is actually allowed here, and me and who I am can go through this and be okay, and I don't have to protect myself, because that's what it comes down to, is everybody is trying to protect themselves.
I think it's having the vulnerability to speak up when you failed and take ownership of it. I think, Lauren, what you said, kind of like the fail bow that you demonstrated, having the vulnerability to do that, but in a more, again, work setting where it's like, hey, I made this mistake. Here's what I think I did wrong. What are ideas I could maybe do in the future to avoid that? I also think about Ricky and kind of in the space he plays in terms of health and fitness, of when you are, again, trying to achieve your health goals, whether it's diet, whether it's running, whether it's working out. The way you improve is by failure. You don't automatically are able to run 10 miles. You maybe can only run 1 mile and then you failed, but you keep pushing yourself and growing, and you can see that like incremental improvements over time until you look back and go, oh my God, I couldn't run 10 miles before. Now I can run 15. Now I can do a full marathon. It's crazy. So I think, again, recognizing that it's a normal part of kind of other aspects of our life, that to Fatma's point, we kind of almost like set a divide and a barrier and don't let it enter into the space.
Yep, so true.
One of the reasons that the fear of failure became so strong is that in the previous, I'm going to say before the pandemic, there was this sense of scarcity, meaning there's only a certain amount of bonus dollars I can get. There are only certain jobs that I can get. There are only certain places I can go. One of the good things about the pandemic is that it destroyed a lot of that infrastructure. Now there are oodles of places that you can work remotely, and people are becoming aware of it. So I think people's fear of failures and learning are going down. Now, that places a burden on employers. Because if you have the type of environment that punishes people for failing, they will leave. And they will go to a place that embraces their humanity and allows them to grow. So you got this really cool tension happening as the leverage for employees has gone up based on the pandemic. So again, not a lot of great came out of the pandemic, but there were some cool things that happened to the employee-employer relationship as a result of it. And that fear of failure going down is one of them.
You're getting a lot of activity, Ricky, in the chat. Sam says, need to find that space outside your comfort zone and allow yourself grace to fail. And I know, Ricky, you talked about that early on. Yes, I love that.
Yeah, man. Look, if you can't tell, I love people, right? And part of being human is that you have to see the humanity in everybody else. And grace is a part of that, right? Grace is what stands in the gap when you don't have everything you need. It allows me to look at you, to imagine myself in your spot, and to say, what must it be like to be that person? And let me extend them a little bit of grace, because I want them to be the best version of themselves. After the pandemic, organizations are becoming more and more human. If they don't, they're going to die off. So that grace has to be abundant in organizations, and it's got to be reflected in like the infrastructure and all of the tools, right? So he's absolutely right. If you can't bring empathy and grace to the workplace, you will be a pariah. Your organization won't be successful. You got to have no fear to be yourself. So I know it's easier said than done, but that's the momentum that we're on right now.
Yep. And so we have an anonymous question here that says, how can you lead a DDO when your business is struggling to survive?
One thing that comes to mind is kind of talking with leadership and saying, hey, where are we struggling and kind of where do we want to go as an organization? What would we need to achieve to right track ourselves? And getting kind of that framework and then be able to connect it to employees of saying, hey, where do you want to grow? And how does that connect to where we want to grow? So kind of bridging that gap and aligning the organizational strategy and where that's taking off, employees where they want to go, and finding where it can intertwine or really resonate. So employees are committed to, again, going beyond delivering in their role because they're growing, they're expanding, they're up-leveling themselves, that in turn could be up-leveling your organization. So that's kind of where my mindset went with right away, is kind of just that alignment between organizational strategy and growth and what the org needs to achieve in order to survive, and align that with an individual's development, wishes, or journey.
That's a great point, Tyler. I love that. And I think what you're talking about speaks to the intrinsic motivation versus, since the business is struggling, you can't really pay people more money to do more work. So like now we're speaking to the intrinsic motivation of people, which is the highest form of Maslow's hierarchy. It's like that thing that is going to have them flow. And if they flow, then the energy in the business will flow as well. And I love how that connects as well.
Any additional thoughts?
I mean, I think if a business is struggling, like, I think growth and like that ability to fail, like, is even more critical, because if it's struggling, we got to get creative. We got to be comfortable trying new things. We have to stretch, because what we've been doing obviously isn't working. And so it's kind of I don't really love this phrase in a lot of ways, but it is kind of like a grow or die kind of way. Like, if it's not working, we got to get people in that mindset to play, because if they're not, they're going to get discouraged. They're going to see it's not working. And if we're just going to stick on like the same track, like, we see where it's headed. So I think it's actually like a survival tactic.
I agree. I think the temptation is to be binary in thinking and to say, hey, we can't do this until we grow, right? But you're right, that's not the case. I think you got to create the kind of environment that says, hey, maybe we're in this spot because we didn't do the things that we're supposed to do. So let's be about growing, right? Also, if you can do that, think about all of the new ideas you invite into the conversation when you create that space.
Yes.
Obviously, the key to growth wasn't amongst the original cohort that caused the organization to fail. The ideas weren't there. So you got to create the kind of environment that opens it up and encourages everyone else to contribute to the success of the organization. And look, I know it's difficult. I've worked for a long time. Again, easier said than done. Part of delivering or doing this work means you got to be courageous. You got to say that thing out loud. Like, yo, can we invite other people into the conversation? Or how did we get here? Or, you know what, doing the same thing over and over is going to put us in the same spot. Let's try something new. I get it. It takes a lot of courage. I am enthusiastic, though, because I think that there's a lot of opportunity to do that. People's ears are open to that now. So I think you may find some fertile ground.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And so with that, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go.
Okay. I was just saying, like, this, I just feel like this is such an interesting thing, because I think when there's the scarcity mindset sometimes with organizations, when they feel like the economy or like their business, they like stop investing in growth and they stop investing in those like moments. But like what we've seen at ThinkHuman is like, we do a lot of leadership development journeys where we take people along this like long path, and it's all about mindset shift and behavior change. And then what ends up happening, like we have this thing called Leader Lab Roundtables, which is where we bring people together after they've had this training, after they've like grown in these ways, and they're kind of like facilitated discussion rooms for like leaders and ICs, and depending on like how you have it set up. But like we've had some companies say like, in those rooms, we have changed the trajectory of our organization. Like the X factor on those moments is huge. If you like do it right, and if you really prioritize it and create the space for it, it creates those opportunities for those big ideas. And this is our way out of it together, kind of thing.
Yeah, building that community and culture. And so with that, we are going to launch a quick poll. We only have 5 minutes left, already towards the end. I know. So please, community, connect with the organizations that you would love to learn more about. Select all of them. They've shared their time with you as well as their valuable insight pertaining to this topic. So we're going to give you 1 more minute to select which organization. And while you are selecting, the community or the panelists will answer this question here. So what are some recommended tools or concrete HR policies, practices that you would recommend that'll enable an organization to be a DDO focused organization?
I got a couple of suggestions. The first thing is around the performance evaluation process. If you haven't already separated your evaluation process from your merit bonus process, those need to be 2 separate conversations. The performance conversation needs to be about the growth that you had, right? And the merit or the bonus conversation should be about the things that you accomplished. They're nuanced, but they're really, really different. And a lot of organizations pull those things together. So I would say lean in right there. Also, in your performance conversations, improvise, yes and, right? You have to see people as a work in progress. Get rid of that language, does not meet expectations, right? It's like, what the heck is that? Like, I'm human. I'm at every, right? It's a growth continuum, right? So if I'm at mile 5 of the marathon and you're at mile 18, it doesn't mean I won't finish, right? It just means I'm at a different spot than you are, right? So you got to kind of be vigilant about the language that you give power to when you talk about how people are doing.
I would add on to that, to Ricky's point of, again, just really reinforcing, how are you holding people accountable for development and growth? I think Fatma or Lauren, you mentioned like, oh, you can talk about like growth is really important to us. We're very much a development organization. But if it's not coming into how someone is being rewarded, recognized, promoted, then it's not ingrained in your culture. So reviewing that performance process too and saying, hey, are we measuring growth? Are we measuring those goals? Are we holding people accountable? Because we can have people set goals until they're blue in the face. But if we're not tracking that and holding them accountable to achieving, updating, enhancing them, then they can fall to the wayside. The other aspect that came to my mind is also, and we did touch on it earlier, taking out the box of like DDO or development has to happen in the classroom. There's multitudes of ways to develop someone. It could be in one-on-ones. It could be encouraging managers to have a development conversation, not on that one-on-one of, hey, what's going on, where your project status is, but hey, let's just focus on your career and your trajectory and your professional development and have that conversation. That's something that even if you have very limited budget, just ensuring that managers are enabled and provided just quick resources of how that conversation should happen can really set you on the path forward to then grow into DDO when budgets, resources become more abundant, maybe in the coming months or years.
Yes.
And to like tag on to that, like we do have to, if our leaders are going to like take that responsibility and take that like coaching aspect and get in that mindset, we have to give them the resources and the training to do that properly. Because if you do not have that foundation and actually know how to do it, which is hard, like people go to school, like it's a whole thing, and we expect managers to just be able to like do it. We have to like invest in them if we're going to depend on them to like help create that. And like a lot of that does happen in the classroom in an experiential way and equipping them with what they need to be successful.
I think for me, it's aligning with leaders with what they want to build inside of their organization in terms of culture, and bringing whatever is under the table on the table to talk about it openly, if what is allowed, what is not allowed, what do we actually want, and thoughtfully thinking about that so you can ingrain it in your training, in your spaces of learning, and have people share experiences in an equitable and meaningful way.
And so with that, we thank, oh, go ahead, Tyler, before we close.
Yes, really quick. If you're a more advanced organization and more developed on this, the one thing I'd also do is prioritize learning, prioritize development. People have initiative projects and other things going on. You would have the best training, the best resources, the best budget out there. But if you're not prioritizing that development and allowing employees to spend that hour, spend that week growing themselves, again, you will also struggle. And that's a huge call out for those more advanced and mature organizations that I see really struggle with this.
Thank you so much, Tyler, for that. With that, we close. We truly do appreciate you. Thank you to Culture and Future and ThinkHuman for sharing their insight and wisdom on this topic. Prioritize DDO. Signing off, Hakimia Jackson, your next moderator. Look forward to having this conversation and future conversation. Bye.
Bye, everyone.